It was never canceled. The next to last season, Danny was going to close it.
Hal Linden is opening up about his experience on Barney Miller, including the 20-hour days of filming, the yelling brawls between stars, the script pages that came during production, and the shocking reason he turned down a role that would have made him richer than he is now, thanks to Barney Miller. The most beloved police captain on television is breaking his silence after 40 years to reveal the terrible reality. Hal Linden's birth name is Harold Lipschitz, and he was born in the Bronx, New York, on March 20th, 1931. A Jewish immigrant family had him as their youngest child. Charles, his father, had emigrated to the United States from Lithuania in 1910, where he had established a modest printing business to provide for the family. Harold was a child of the Great Depression who grew up in a diverse, bustling, working-class neighborhood. With each passing year, Harold's devotion to music deepened. Among other brilliant young painters and musicians, he enrolled at Manhattan's High School of Music and Art. There, he developed an obsession with the clarinet and began performing with symphony orchestras at the tender age of 16. He also became well known for his musical abilities after learning to play the saxophone. He began his college career at Queens College with a music degree, but transferred to City College of New York to major in business after his freshman year. In his mind, it would benefit him in the long term to have an understanding of how the entertainment industry functioned. To pass the time and get some stage experience, he joined dancing bands all throughout town. In the early 1950s, while riding the bus, everything changed. A water tower in New Jersey bore the name Linden, which Harold saw when he rode from Philadelphia to New York. He had been considering a name change for some time. Harold Lipschitz just didn't seem right for the entertainment industry. The solution came to him during that bus journey. He thought Linden sounded nice. It was easy on the ears. The diminutive form of his first name, Hal, remained with him. After that, he changed his identity to Hal Linden. Curiously, his current name and his previous one both derive from terms that mean lime tree in various languages, subtly honoring his heritage. This change occurred in the midst of an unexpected event in 1952, when Hal was enlisted in the United States military, Army, and deployed to Fort Belvoir in Virginia. He maintained his musical connection while in military by performing with the Army Band. Something sparked inside Hal after seeing a touring performance of Guys and Dolls in neighboring Washington, D.C., at the suggestion of a fellow soldier. Something new washed over him as he sat in the crowd and watched the performers bring the narrative to life. He was very moved by the stage, the enthusiasm, and the narrative. After the play concluded, Hal had already decided he wanted to pursue acting. Hal Linden was the biggest mystery on Broadway for a whole decade. He was the man behind the scenes from 1956 to 1966, ready to come into the spotlight whenever needed. He learned hundreds of main parts and raced between theaters like a man with a secret while filling in for famous Hollywood performers. It was not uncommon for him to be juggling 3 concerts at once. With screenplays in one hand and gags in the other, he was always on the go. He lived in a cramped apartment on the Upper West Side with his family, and they would joke about it at home. Dad's bringing home the understudy bacon again. Despite the fact that their fridge was never full, their ambition persisted. When Sidney Chaplin and Judy Holliday had an altercation on set of the 1958 musical Bells Are Ringing, Chaplin decided to leave the show. Hal had been patiently waiting and making preparations behind the scenes. It was his time now, and he had only one day to prepare. Taking the stage, he delivered a performance unlike any he had ever done before. The New York Times ran an ad featuring him the next morning. At last, he was recognized by the city. It opened doors to other roles, including as 1962's Anything Goes, in which he co-starred with a young Barbra Streisand, whose fame was just beginning to grow. Even for the successful, Broadway can be cruel at times. The part was becoming increasingly scarce by the mid-1960s. Whatever Lyndon could get his hands on, he did. He dove headfirst into the bizarre realm of industrial musicals, elaborate productions staged only for corporate functions. Hollywood, notoriety, and the bright lights of Broadway would not exist. He has the role of a dancing carburetor in the program Diesel Dazzle. Very much so. He was also a voice actor and singer for commercials and international films. Hal Linden could have been the one you heard humming "Good for Campbell's Soup" if you did. And then came 1971. The role of Mayor Rothschild in a new musical about the illustrious banking family finally came to Linden after years of trying. Despite setbacks, directors leaving, screenplay rewrites, Linden persisted with the project. The audience sprang to their feet as soon as the doors opened to the performance. They stood for 10 minutes to applaud him. Success followed in the form of a Tony for Best Actor, musical. Hal Linden had finally broken through at the age of 40, after spending 20 years in the background. "It only took me 20 years to become an overnight sensation," he quipped as he stood on stage, trophy in hand. What followed, though, was perhaps the most unexpected turn of events. Danny Arnold, a television producer, visited the Rothschilds in 1972. Despite his obvious astonishment at Linden's performance, he remained silent throughout. Then, in 1974, Arnold said to ABC, "I've found our Barney Miller." Without an audition or prior knowledge that he had been considered for the part, Linden was placed in the lead role of a new police station comedy. Captain Barney Miller, portrayed by Hal Linden, was a man attempting to maintain sanity in a mad world. No matter how strange the situations or individuals were in the 12th Precinct, Barney always managed to keep everything under control. To get through the mayhem, he relied on humor, dry, subtle, and razor-sharp, rather than yelling or pounding desks. He exuded an air of wisdom and tranquility. A contemplative judge in the midst of a tempest, Linden once compared Barney to a Talmudic character. Particularly with actual police officers, that subtle power hit a nerve. Even after the show ended, many police officers still called Linden Captain. Some even went so far as to claim that the show was the most realistic depiction of their work that they had ever seen on television. Dennis Fina, a former police officer turned actor, made the same point. The show's characters and plot were realistic, and the writing was more complex than what you'd find in most sitcoms. It wasn't simple to attain that quality on screen, though. From behind the scenes, the show was a living nightmare. Not Barney Miller. Most sitcoms shot in a single sitting in front of an actual audience. Due to his meticulous nature, Danny Arnold endured 2 grueling days of filming. Due to the late hour of the second, cast members would occasionally begin their day early and finish just before sunrise the next day. Just minutes before filming began, cast and crew received revised script pages. Before they started shooting, they didn't always know how it would conclude. The effort paid off, but it was tiring. According to Arnold, there is one rule: characters should never do anything stupid for laughs. A sense of being genuine was essential for them. Regardless of the number of revisions and nights spent in bed, Linden recognized that. As a consequence, the presentation was exceptional. It was humorous, but it was also intelligent, heartfelt, and full of profound ideas. Hal Linden managed to find time to host the Sunday morning children's educational show Animals, Animals, Animals. Despite all this mayhem, he delivered monologues blending scientific facts with tales from art and mythology, covering a wide range of species. It wasn't just filler. He assumed that children could grasp intricate concepts. He persisted in his profession despite getting clawed, bit, and peed on several times. Yet, he laughed afterward about these injuries because he felt children needed better television. In addition to his 2 daytime Emmys for FYI, he presented another series. He had a schedule that would cause most people to pass out, mixing his primetime stardom with his educational activities. Even though he was well respected by his colleagues and had achieved great success, the Emmy had always seemed elusive. Lyndon sat through the Barney Miller nominations for 7 consecutive years, but each time he left empty-handed. This man's failure to win the award that appeared to be a foregone conclusion became one of those peculiar little truths about Hollywood. He was an executive producer of one of the most beloved and critically acclaimed comedies of all time. Not because of a lack of ability or fame, but because of pure luck. In January 1975, viewers were treated to Barney Miller, a police drama unlike any other. There were no vehicle chases or gunfights at the beginning or the finale. The majority of the events, however, transpired within a single room, a dilapidated squad room located within a New York City police station. At their workstations, the detectives waited for anything to happen, argued, laughed, and filled out reports. Because of it, it seemed genuine. Because it depicted the job as it really is, long hours of paperwork, weird individuals coming through the door, and a daily combination of dullness, turmoil, and absurdity, the program connected with police officers around the country. True police officers continued to refer to Hal Linden as Captain long after the program had finished because of how realistic it was. What set the show apart was its emphasis on characters rather than action. One such person was Detective Harris, an African-American scholar with literary aspirations. An American-Polish ex-Marine named Wojo was there. He was kind-hearted, but sometimes naive. Yamada, a Japanese-American with a penchant for awful coffee and a gift for timing his dry quips just so. Also present was Chano, an emotionally volatile Puerto Rican police. All of them were complete, witty, imperfect, intelligent, and authentic. At the time, television rarely featured such diversity. The majority of television series still featured white actors, and minority roles were often stereotypical or underdeveloped. However, Barney Miller chose not to go that path. Because of this, everyone felt like they had a genuine voice and personality. Because of it, the show seemed relevant and contemporary. Afterwards, an even more daring event transpired. An episode titled "The Courtesans" from the first season dealt with prostitution and concluded with a shocking statement. Wojo approached the captain after his interviews with 2 high-end sex workers and said, "Could you lend me $50 until payday?" The suggestion that a police officer may be considering footing the bill for sex was obvious. That, too, had never aired on a television sitcom. This episode was given an X rating by the network, which is extremely rare. However, the show's strength was enhanced by the debate, rather than diminished by it. People watched. The ratings went up. After years of underperformance, ABC finally found success in that time slot. The fate of the show was somewhat sealed by that one episode. Additionally, it demonstrated that people were prepared to see innovative storytelling. There was more to come. It persisted in tackling heavy subjects with grace and humor. It demonstrated Wojo's internal conflict, not with hatred but with perplexion, and included a gay character on a recurrent basis, which was almost unprecedented in the 1970s. "Why don't you make more of an effort to be straight?" he asked a homosexual man in one instance. The host just let the man's statement sink in. It was measured, forthright, and illuminating. You can be crushed or brought closer by pressure, so the saying goes. It served a dual purpose on the Barney Miller set. The ensemble wasn't only pulling together on stage, they were fighting for their lives. The nights would frequently become longer after a long day. Starting at 8:00 a.m. and staying until 6:00 a.m. the next day was par for the course. While filming their comedy, Hal Linden and his co-stars endured a grind that few producers would dare to tackle. Real relationships were formed by Linden through it all. His relationship with Abe Vigoda was based on mutual respect rather than friendship. Vigoda was known for his reputation as an obnoxious and difficult co-worker in Hollywood. In matters of finance in particular, he could be defiant. He briefly disappeared from the show. However, Linden never abandoned him. Despite the tension, he remained Vigoda's side. Unlike other relationships, the bond with Ron Glass was based on perseverance. The monotony of their workdays weighed heavily on them both. Glass would go on to describe the ordeal as painful, but also as a unifying force. Glass had Linden's utmost regard for his timing and composure in high-pressure situations. Even though they were both fatigued, there was an indelible bond between them. The most challenging chapter followed. Cancer struck Jack Sue during Season 4, causing him to lose his role as the cynical sergeant famous for his terrible coffee. He persisted in attending even as his condition deteriorated. Despite looking sick, he managed to make it through a few of episodes, all in an effort to provide laughter. His last appearance was in The Vandal, in which Sue joked that his coffee was the problem right before a major operation. He was completely characterized by that moment. He was always the actor. His death was a devastating blow to everyone. Nobody in the cast was ready to let go. They decided to shoot an homage instead, with no screenplay and only recollections. Finally, they stood silently, raising their coffee cups to the sky. More was conveyed by that one action than by any number of words. Loss, however, wasn't the only difficulty they faced. Perfectionism was strictly enforced by the show's creator, Danny Arnold. The time it took was irrelevant to him. Arnold would sometimes extend the second day of taping to 16 hours or longer, even though most sitcoms were filmed in a single day. Scenes were continuously revised. It was not uncommon for them to begin filming an episode without knowing how it would conclude. On one occasion, production got underway with a meager 6 pages of screenplay. The show's continual overruns on budget infuriated executives. Even Arnold refused to allow members of the network onto the shoot. He persisted in his efforts even after his health failed him. He suffered a heart attack as the show was airing. Barney Miller wouldn't have been the same without him. The ensemble remained united despite the mayhem. Ron Glass made a joke about how it took 3 days to recover after working 4 days straight. In order to maintain their sanity, they established routines, playing card games during delays and sharing meals once episodes ended. In order to keep everyone going over the long nights, Max Gale would sometimes bring food from home. Only he and Linden received opening credits, and they frequently spearheaded efforts to maintain optimism. The producers of the new medical drama St. Elsewhere offered Hal Linden the character of Dr. Donald Westfall in 1982, when he was at a high point in his career following 7 years of playing Captain Barney Miller. Linden skipped reading the script despite how obvious it was as the next logical step. Without meeting the producers or asking any questions, he immediately responded negatively. He only declined. He was exhausted from years of non-stop labor and couldn't stand the stress of weekly television. Everything changed because of that hasty decision. Ed Flanders, who was nominated for 3 Emmys and contributed to the show's success, was cast in the part. Actors Denzel Washington and Howie Mandel got their start on St. Elsewhere. which went on to become a highly discussed series of the decade. In hindsight, Lyndon acknowledged the possibility of missing out on something significant. Nonetheless, he remained steadfast in his decision. For him, at that time, relaxation was more important than stardom. After a period of absence from television, Lyndon attempted a return. Nothing stuck, despite his best efforts to discover anything that might compete with Barney Miller's popularity. Starring opposite Harry Morgan as a magician who worked with his con artist father to solve murders, he appeared in 1986's Black's Magic. The program was canceled after 13 episodes, despite having a fun concept. In 1992, he gave it another go with Jack's Place, in which he portrayed a jazz pianist who managed a small cafe with eccentric regulars. 18 episodes were all that one had. He tried again 2 years later with The Boys Are Back, but the same fate befell both shows. A brief run, poor ratings, and an early termination. After nearly 10 years of looking, Lyndon finally gave up on finding the perfect project. Television had evolved, and the enchantment had faded. Despite all of those setbacks, he never stopped performing. The stage was his forever home. After a hiatus of over 30 years, he made a triumphant comeback to Broadway in 2002 when he was 71 years old. He brought nuance and humanity to the role of Herr Schultz in Cabaret, a reserved man searching for love in the midst of a bleak world. His excellent performance won over critics and audiences alike, proving that Lyndon's skill had never waned. He co-starred with Sally Struthers in the Journals of Adam and Eve in 2024 when he was 93 years old. The piece deftly dealt with themes of love, age, and connection, demonstrating that Lyndon remained a captivating performer. He maintained his incisive wit, genuine humanity, and stage presence far into his 10th decade. Even though his cinematic career was smaller, he managed to land several memorable parts. He co-starred with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau as a charismatic cruise liner dance host in the 1997 film Out to Sea. Lyndon was a natural match with the other comedic greats in this light-hearted film. Then, in 2023, he made an appearance in a contemporary tale about culture, family, and identity called You People, which was available on Netflix. Even if his position as Mr. Greenwald was little, it demonstrated that Lyndon was nonetheless game to be a part of daring contemporary storylines. It wasn't until 2011 that Lyndon put out his debut album, yet music has always played a role in his life. The man was in his 80s. The record, which was originally scheduled for release in the 1980s but was repeatedly postponed, was titled It's Never Too Late. Upon its release, it showcased the sounds of large bands and jazz standards. Lyndon then moved on to perform live, showcasing his silky voice. He would play as many as 28 events a year, particularly in the Florida area. People really adored him. He clearly wasn't done, as the title of the CD made it clear. Frances, his wife, was a constant in his life throughout. They tied the knot 3 years after meeting in 1955 during a summer theatrical show. Although Lyndon had described their 52-year marriage as stormy, he was of the belief that the trials they had endured had only served to fortify their bond. Frances left her job as a dancer to take care of their 4 children and help Lyndon weather her insecure employment for many years. He endured a tumultuous and uncertain decade, working as an understudy before Barney Miller. But Frances was at his side the whole time. Lyndon lost his most ardent fan when she died in 2010 at the age of 82. Their lengthy marriage was one of his finest accomplishments, and he frequently spoke about her with profound respect. It wasn't simple to raise 4 kids on set of a popular TV show. Lyndon put in 12 to 14-hour days while working for Barney Miller. I had to skip out on birthday parties, family meals, and school performances because of it. His job kept pulling him away, but he did his best to be there when he could. But he kept in touch, and his 4 children, Amelia, Nora, Jennifer, and Ian, stayed close. He made a joke about how, after all his efforts, they were still in touch and wanted him to come visit. He acknowledged that he had rushed into his decision, not fully understanding the impact it would have on their lives, to pursue a career on television instead of on Broadway. Harold Lipschitz was a Jewish immigrant from the Bronx who gave birth to Lyndon in 1931. His father was an ardent supporter of Israel and the Jewish state. That rich cultural heritage shaped Lyndon's outlook on life and acting. Captain Barney Miller, his most renowned creation, embodied those traits, wise, fair, and composed under duress. Even when she wasn't acting, Lyndon continued to support Jewish causes. In honor of his parents, he has been a spokesperson for the Jewish National Fund since 1997 and has given to Israeli causes. His focus was not on current events, but on his family's past and his sense of self. People couldn't get enough of Ron Glass's understated charisma. Memories of him are a mixture of pride and regret for Hal Lyndon, who was his close collaborator on Barney Miller. In 2016, at the age of 71, Glass went away. He had previously portrayed the slick, intelligent, and occasionally sardonic Detective Ron Harris, who was perpetually penning a book titled Blood on the Badge. He was well received for his understated, profoundly reflective performance, which lent an air of refinement to the part. In a complete departure from his previous portrayal as Barney Miller, Glass shocked fans when he appeared as Shepard Book in the cult favorite space fiction series Firefly. His fans fell head over heels for him again due to his cool, enigmatic demeanor. Despite its brief run, Firefly left a lasting impression, particularly with the continuation of the plot in Serenity. Glass, when he wasn't acting, was a quiet, kind man who avoided the limelight. Additionally, he provided the voice of Randy Carmichael for animated series such as Rugrats. Without letting his composure slip, he deftly transitioned between comedic, dramatic, and animated roles. The actor Abe Vigoda, in contrast, became embroiled in a bizarre Hollywood running joke. People magazine inadvertently reported his death in 1982, but he was still alive and performing in a play in Calgary at the time. Rather of being irritated, Vigoda embraced the humor. To show that he was still alive, he jogged down the street and posed for pictures. A television station made the same error again years later, which stoked the flames even more. Posing with the magazine that had murdered him, he even posed in a coffin. A website dedicated just to monitoring his vital signs emerged at some point. It was up for a long time. It finally came down in 2016 when he was 94 years old. He continued to laugh along with the rest of the group through it all. His comedic timing further deepened his admirers' affection for him. Max Gale veered off the road less traveled. Instead of fading or slowing down after Barney Miller, he took on increasingly complex and emotionally charged parts. He began his role as Mike Corbin, an Alzheimer's-stricken father, on General Hospital in 2018 when he was 75 years old. Despite the difficulty of the part, Gale played it with integrity and candor, earning him a Daytime Emmy. The sincerity of the experience affected both viewers and reviewers. Prior to that, he was known as Wojo, the innocent-looking but occasionally misguided police officer from Barney Miller. Decades later, he was still delivering stellar performances, earning him 2 Emmy nominations in the process. Despite playing the lead role, Hal Lyndon frequently gushes about how Gale stole the show. At conventions, they still make appearances together, reminiscing and showing mutual admiration. Steve Landesberg exuded an aura of his own. He portrayed Detective Dietrich on Barney Miller, the show's resident nerd who could be relied on for any philosophical or scientific question. What made him remarkable was his intelligence, which was almost excessive. "I don't read any of that stuff," Landesberg laughed when asked about his real-life reading habits. Everything was easy to think he was so intelligent, since he made everything work so beautifully. He was welcomed back as a regular after appearing as a false priest selling stolen Bibles. Lyndon remembers this well, and she speaks kindly of him even though he passed away in 2010. The tale of Gregory Sierra was unique. He was Chano in the first few seasons. There was friction between him and Lyndon, despite the fact that he was the show's biggest star when it premiered. Perhaps complicating matters was the fact that Sierra had already secured another performance. Despite Lyndon's claims that he and Sierra never had an issue, he could sense that Sierra was unhappy with him. But that aside, Sierra's performance was significant. He was born and raised in Spanish Harlem, and he fell into acting practically by coincidence. He was there to support a buddy who had auditioned, but he ended up getting cast instead. He battled cancer till his death in 2021. Hal Lyndon, who is 94 years old today, has had a life most people can only dream of, performing symphonic concerts as a teenager, working as an understudy on Broadway, collecting Tony Awards, becoming a pioneer in television, and then returning to the stage in his 10th decade. He has witnessed the highs and lows of the entertainment industry, endured struggles behind the scenes that would have demolished weaker souls, and persevered. He made it through the reality program that ruined marriages, professions, and lives, and now he's prepared to tell the tale.